All right. So getting ready for coding interviews, right? It can be like nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
But today we are going to dive deep into a classic problem that pops up all the time, the three-sum problem.
Yes,
And this is one of those questions that interviewers just love
it is.
because it tests your problem-solving skills, how you think about algorithms, and whether you can write efficient code.
It's a favorite for a reason.
Yeah.
The three-sum problem asks you to find all the unique sets of three numbers in an array that add up to 0.
Okay.
Sounds simple, but it's a great way to see how you approach challenges.
So it's not just about getting the answer, it's about how you get there.
Exactly. It's about the journey as much as the destination.
Okay.
Let's say you're given an array like this, -1, 0, 1, 2, -1, -4.
Okay.
You need to find those unique triplets like -1, 0, and 1.
Yeah.
That sum to 0.
And no duplicates allowed,
Right.
which adds a whole other layer of complexity to it.
Abs-
I can see how interviewers would use this as almost like detective work for code.
It really is.
Right. Are you spotting potential duplicates? Are you thinking about how to avoid them?
And here's an interesting tip.
Okay.
Interviewers often use three-sum as a follow-up to two-sum problems.
Oh, interesting.
If you're asked about two-sum earlier in the interview, it might be a hint about what's coming next.
Okay, so almost like they're setting you up.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
Now let's jump into some approaches.
Okay, so there are multiple ways to solve this puzzle.
There are.
Let's start with the two pointers technique.
Okay.
I've heard this one is pretty slick.
It is.
Okay.
The two pointers technique is all about efficiency.
Okay.
The key is to sort the array first.
Sort it first. Okay.
Why? Because sorting allows us to use those two pointers to find triplets much faster.
So how does sorting help? What exactly are these pointers doing?
Imagine you have the sorted array. We pick one number. Let's call it the pivot. Now imagine two pointers, one starting at the beginning of the array and the other at the end.
Okay.
We're looking for two numbers that, when added to our pivot, equals 0.
Okay, I'm following so far.
Because the array is sorted, we can move those pointers inward.
Okay.
If the sum is too small, we move the left pointer to a bigger number.
Okay.
If the sum is too big, we move the right pointer to a smaller number.
I see. So it's like a narrowing search.
Exactly.
So if our pivot is -1, we're looking for two numbers that add up to +1.
Exactly.
No-
And by moving the pointers, we're efficiently searching for those pairs.
Uh,
But remember, we need unique triplets.
Right.
With a sorted array, it's easy to skip over duplicates because they'll be right next to each other.
Okay, this all sounds great on paper,
Sure.
but what about in the actual interview?
That's where communication becomes just as important as the code itself.
Okay.
While you're coding, explain your thought process to the interviewer. Walk them through the algorithms step by step, highlight the optimizations, and don't be afraid to think out loud.
So it's not just about showing off your coding skills, it's showing that you can communicate your approach clearly.
Absolutely.
Got it.
It shows the interviewer you understand the why behind your code
Right.
and that you can communicate technical ideas effectively.
Now, I've also heard about another approach that uses hash sets.
Yes.
What are those and why would you use them for this problem?
A hash set is like a special container that allows you to check if a number exists in it extremely quickly.
Okay.
Think of it as a super organized toolbox where you can instantly find the tool you need.
Okay, that makes sense.
So how do hash sets help us solve the three-sum problem?
Yeah.
We still sort the array first,
Okay.
which makes things easier.
Okay.
Then, as we go through the array, we use the hash set to find the complement for each number.
So if we have -1, we'd be looking for a +1 in the hash set.
Exactly. The hash set lets us do this check very efficiently. But there's a trade-off.
Okay.
Hash sets need extra memory to store all those numbers.
So it's almost like we're trading memory for speed.
Precisely.
Okay.
That's a key concept. Interviewers might ask about the trade-off between time complexity and space complexity.
Okay. I'm definitely starting to see how this all comes together.
Good.
So we've got two solid approaches, two pointers and hash it.
Yes.
They both have their strengths and weaknesses.
Right.
But before we move on, there's something I'm curious about.
Okay.
You mentioned that interviewers love to throw curveballs.
Let's just say interviewers enjoy seeing how you adapt when the problem gets a little more interesting.
Okay, I'm a little nervous now.
Sure.
What kind of curveball might they throw at us for the three-sum problem?
Imagine this. You've just explained the two pointers and hash set approaches.
Okay.
You're feeling good.
Yeah.
And then the interviewer says,
Like,
Okay, that's all well and good.
Yeah.
But what if you can't sort the array?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
Yep.
That definitely throws a wrench into those neat pointer movements we were talking about.
It does. This is where the no sort challenge comes in.
Okay.
We can still use a hash set to make things faster, but now we need some extra tricks to handle those duplicates and make sure our solution is efficient.
So how do we even begin to tackle this without sorting?
It gets a bit more complex, but let me try to break it down.
Okay.
We use a hash set to keep track of the numbers we've seen.
Okay.
Then, for each pair of numbers in the array, we check if their complement, the number needed to make the sum 0, exists in the hash set.
Okay. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we deal with duplicates if the array isn't sorted?
That's the tricky part.
Right.
We need to make sure we're not counting the same triplet multiple times.
Right.
One way is to use another hash set to keep track of the triplets we've already found.
Okay.
Before adding a new triplet, we check if it's already in this triplet hash set.
So we're using hash sets to track both individual numbers and the triplets themselves. It's all about keeping things organized without relying on sorting.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, it's important to note that even though we're still using a hash set,
Okay.
this no-sort approach is usually slower in practice than the sorted approaches.
Why is that? I thought hash sets were all about speed.
They are, but the no-sort approach involves a bit more bookkeeping and extra checks to handle those duplicates.
Okay.
These extra steps add some overhead,
I see.
even though the overall time complexity technically remains the same.
So even if the no sort approach isn't the most efficient, it sounds like it's still valuable to know.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Being able to discuss this approach shows the interviewer that you can think beyond the basic solutions.
Yeah.
And consider different scenarios.
Okay.
It demonstrates a deeper understanding of the problem and algorithm design.
It's like saying, I'm not just memorizing algorithms, I'm thinking critically about how they work and how to adapt them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, beyond the code itself,
Oh.
there's another crucial aspect of technical interviews that can make or break your performance.
Oh, what's that?
Communication,
You've mentioned this before.
right?
It's not just about writing the code, it's about explaining it.
Right. Think of the technical interview as a conversation.
Okay.
The interviewer wants to see how you think, how you approach challenges, and how well you can explain your ideas.
So how can we improve our communication during these interviews? Are there any specific things we should keep in mind?
Definitely. First, be clear and concise.
Good.
Use simple language to explain your thought process and your code.
Okay.
Avoid jargon or overly complex explanations unless the interviewer specifically asks for them.
So it's about making sure they understand your logic,
Yeah,
not trying to impress them with fancy words.
exactly.
Okay.
Second, be interactive.
Okay.
Don't just sit there passively answering questions.
Right.
Ask clarifying questions to make sure you understand the problem fully. For example, you could ask, are there any constraints on memory usage I should be aware of?
Okay. That shows you're thinking about efficiency and potential limitations.
Exactly.
What other kinds of questions could we ask?
You could ask for an example of a challenging input for the problem.
Okay.
This shows that you're thinking about edge cases and how your solution might handle them.
Right.
Or you could ask if it would be valuable to explore alternative approaches,
Okay.
even if they might be less efficient.
Gotcha.
This demonstrates that you're considering different options and thinking critically about the trade-offs.
Asking these questions makes you seem more engaged and proactive.
Yes.
Like you're saying, I'm not just here to get the answer. I'm here to learn and collaborate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And finally, remember that interviewers are human too.
Okay.
They understand that you might be nervous.
Right.
It's okay to take a moment to gather your thoughts, and don't be afraid to admit if you're stuck.
It's better to be honest and ask for guidance than to stumble through a solution you don't fully understand.
Absolutely. Remember, the interviewer is on your side.
Okay.
They want to see you succeed.
That's good.
Now, let's move on to some bonus tips that might not be directly related to the threesome problem,
Okay.
but are crucial for acing those technical interviews.
Okay. So we've talked about different approaches to the threesome problem.
Right.
We've thought about time and space complexity,
Hmm.
even how to communicate effectively during the interview.
Yes.
But there's one more thing that I wanted to touch on.
Okay.
It's something that's not really about the code itself, but can make a huge difference.
You're talking about mindset. Right.
Exactly.
It's something people often overlook, but it can have a big impact on how you perform
It really can.
in these pressure cooker situations.
Absolutely. I remember when I was prepping for my first coding interviews, I was so nervous.
Yeah.
I felt like I had to know everything perfectly or I would just fail.
It's natural to feel that way.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Interviewers aren't looking for perfection. They're looking for potential.
All right.
They want to see how you think, how you approach challenges, and how you handle pressure.
So how do we shift our mindset from feeling overwhelmed to feeling confident?
Preparation is key.
Okay.
The more you practice, the more comfortable you'll become with the types of problems interviewers ask
Yeah.
and the techniques to solve them.
And it's not just about practicing alone in a dark room, right?
Right.
You've got to,
Find a study buddy, join a coding group, or participate in online coding challenges.
yeah.
Explaining your solutions to others and seeing how they approach problems can be incredibly helpful.
Absolutely. It's like learning from each other's strengths and weaknesses.
Exactly.
Now, what about when we inevitably make mistakes?
Sure.
I know I've stumbled through my fair share of coding problems, even in practice.
Of course.
How do we handle those moments in an interview?
Mistakes are part of the process.
Right.
Everyone makes them.
Yeah.
What sets successful candidates apart is how they react. Instead of panicking, acknowledge the mistake, take a breath, and try to figure out where you went wrong.
Okay, so it's about showing that you can learn from your errors and course correct.
Exactly. The interviewer might even offer hints or guidance if they see that you're genuinely trying to understand.
It circles back to that idea of the interview being a conversation, a collaborative problem-solving session.
Right. And remember, even if you don't solve every problem perfectly,
Yeah.
demonstrating your thought process, communication skills, and problem-solving abilities can leave a positive impression.
So to wrap things up, let's leave our listener with a final challenge to ponder.
Okay.
We've talked about the three-sum problem, where the target sum is 0.
Right.
But what if the interviewer asks you to find triplets that add up to a specific target value?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
It's a variation on the theme, and it really tests whether you understand the underlying principles
Yeah.
of the algorithms we've discussed.
Right.
Could you adapt the 2 pointers approach?
Yeah.
How about the hash set method?
So many things to think about.
It's a fantastic exercise to try out on your own.
Absolutely. And as you continue prepping for those coding interviews,
Yeah.
remember, it's not just about memorizing algorithms.
Yeah.
It's about building a solid foundation of problem-solving skills, clear communication, and a resilient mindset.
And most importantly, don't forget to enjoy the process.
Yeah,
Coding is a challenging but incredibly rewarding field.
it is.
Embrace the learning journey and best of luck in your interviews.
That's it for our deep dive into the three-sum problem.
Great.
We hope you found it helpful and insightful.
I did.
Until next time, happy coding.